it's out of the news a bit, but we all remember that in 2013 there was a sort of breakthrough agreement between Iran and the G5+1 that they were meeting in Geneva at the time, and that basically an agreement that would, in exchange essentially for relaxing sanctions on Iran, Iran would agree to greater oversight on its nuclear program. And this happened in conjunction with a lot of things. New president of Iran, really sort of, rebranding Iran in a different way. Rouhani going on NBC and speaking to Ann Curry and talking about how in international relations we need to focus less on problems and things we don't want to see happen and more on optimal scenarios. P5 plus one, that's right. So the P5 plus one, so the interim agreement was established. There was an extension based on negotiations this past spring, and they're meeting again in this week to continue negotiations on Iran's program and on, of course, relaxing sanctions. And the big issue here is the actual mechanics of this deal are not that hard. For one, there's never been anything remotely approaching definitive proof that Iran wanted to weaponize its program. Now, this is a whole other conversation, but Iran is not. Now, nuclear technology is dual-use technology. Under the Non-Proliferation Treaty, which Iran is a signature of, every country in the world has a right to nuclear power. This was the Atoms for Peace program, I think it was called, in the 1950s, in the beginning of these sort of 1950s and 60s, in the beginning of these global agreements on containing nuclear weapons. So Iran is within its right under that treaty to enrich and have nuclear power. Now, the environmental consequences of it and the safety of it are separate questions. But under the context of that treaty, they have a right, Japan has a right, South Africa, Brazil, Argentina, Germany, Ukraine, anywhere has a right to do this. So that's not really in question. And then so the question is and some positions, the position of the right here and the position of Israel has been Iran simply cannot have that technology, period. Now, that's not going to happen. They're going to have that technology. I think Iran has definitely had, amongst certain factions of the Iranian leadership, there has been some strategic ambiguity about the nature of their program. Because don't forget, they're thwarting off. If you were Iran in 2003, 2004, and you thought to yourself, okay, there's a ring of U.S. troop presence around us. There's Iraq, there's Afghanistan, troops stationed all throughout the Gulf, and we're in the axis of evil speech. They didn't go after North Korea, that does actually have a weapons program. What's to keep us from going after us? Israel hates us. So there's a reason why Iran would have some ambiguity about their program in terms of a deterrence on them getting invaded. The notion that Iran would launch a preemptive strike is insane, crazy, shows a complete fear-mongering and total misunderstanding of how the Iranian leadership works, which I am no defender of. Do many terrible things, but they're not launching a nuke into Israel or giving one to Hezbollah to launch into Israel to herald the second coming of the Mahdi or whatever other thing you'll hear on Fox News or in some conspiracy journals. That's ridiculous. Or in the Congress, for that matter. So the mechanics of this deal are really close, and it would basically mean Iran accepting tight new monitoring of its program, but it would still have some program, and in response, there would be a loosening and dropping of sanctions and really allowing Iran to kind of reintegrate into the global system. There's problems on both sides. On Iran, the supreme leader, according to analysts, Ayatollah Khatami, has basically given the permission for Rouhani and the foreign minister Zarif to negotiate, but he hasn't committed to accepting a deal. Because just as there's a hard right in the United States, there's a hard right in Iran that doesn't want to back down to any Western demands, and for that matter, likes this policy of strategic ambiguity about having a weapons program. So inside Iran, you have a very small window for Rouhani and reformists, but also pragmatists who want to make a deal. And that window's closing. So that deal could come through now. The momentum will be on that side, and it could probably happen. But if it doesn't, it will revert back. Now, we know Obama really wants this deal, and you know that Obama saw this a couple weeks ago, came out that he sent a private letter to the supreme leader saying that they should coordinate against ISIS. I'm sure that that's already happening informally through the Kurds. But we know that in Congress and in the Senate, while Democrats were able to fight back Republican and conservative Democrat efforts to undermine this deal last winter, now with the Republicans back in control, that's a really bad sign for this deal. We were talking about people like Menendez and Kirk, Menendez from New Jersey, Democrat, Mark Kirk, Republican from Illinois. They're already talking about reintroducing a new sanctions package which would undermine and kill this deal. It also shows Obama as undermined and diminished in the eyes of the Iranian negotiating partners. Now, Obama could, again, through executive action, he could actually lift a lot of these sanctions on his own. And one theory would be, if this agreement comes into fruition, the sanctions are lifted in the short term, and you see how well it works, there's a natural momentum to it that could sustain the agreement. But that's not a guarantee. And I would just say that while we watch the Republican Congress for all of the insane things that they're going to try to do over the next couple of years, including things that are, much more immediate to people's lives and very rightly should be focused on, this is probably the preeminent foreign policy, world stability issue, or at least certainly one of the next decade or two. You really have the opportunity to produce a lot more stability and progress, or continue in a situation which could definitely lead to a truly catastrophic war and military engagement. So that's what's happening with negotiations with Iran. They're resuming again this week in Switzerland.